She was abandoned at the airport while 8 months pregnant. 15 years later, her ex-husband needed a kidney transplant and was shocked to discover that their son. When Layla Mitchell boards a flight to San Francisco with her husband Ethan, she believes they're embarking on a new chapter of their lives together. 8 months pregnant and full of dreams, she has no idea that her world is about to shatter in the most unexpected way. What follows is a gripping tale of betrayal, resilience, and the complexities of forgiveness that will challenge everything she thought she knew about love, family, and second chances. As fate weaves an intricate web of circumstances, Layla and her son Noah must confront a decision that could either heal old wounds or deepen them forever. In this emotional journey, we discover that sometimes the hardest choices we face aren't between right and wrong, but between two different kinds of right. Layla Mitchell sat in the bustling Terminal 3 of JFK Airport, her heart racing as she watched the screens displaying flight information. The bright neon lights and the constant buzz of travelers around her blended into a cacophony that felt both familiar and overwhelming. 8 months pregnant, she could feel the weight of her belly pressing against the fabric of her dress, a constant reminder of the life she was about to bring into the world. She shifted nervously in her seat, her eyes darting toward her husband, Ethan, who was busy tapping away on his phone, checking their flight status. "Ethan, do you think we'll make it to the gate in time?" Layla asked, trying to inject some levity into her anxious thoughts. Her voice trembled slightly, a mix of excitement and apprehension swirling within her. He looked up, his blue eyes crinkling at the corners as he offered her a reassuring smile. "Of course, Layla. We've got plenty of time. Just a quick flight to San Francisco, and then we can finally relax. You deserve it." He leaned over to touch her belly, the warmth of his palm sending a ripple of comfort through her. Layla felt her heart swell with pride as she watched him. Ethan had always been ambitious, chasing his dreams of building a successful tech startup. She had supported him wholeheartedly, selling her physiotherapy clinic and investing every penny of her savings into his venture. It had been a leap of faith, one she had thought would bring them closer together. Yet beneath her pride lay an undercurrent of doubt, a nagging sensation that something was off. "Promise me you won't forget about us while you're out there," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. "I know how you get when you're caught up in work." "Hey, I would never forget about you or our little one," he replied, his tone light but his eyes betraying a hint of seriousness. "Just a few more months and everything will change for the better. You'll see." He brushed a stray strand of hair behind her ear, and for a moment the world around them faded away. But as she watched him, Layla couldn't shake the twinge of unease that had settled in her gut. She recalled the late nights he spent working, the conversations that had turned into arguments about priorities. She had sacrificed so much for his dreams, and now as she prepared to embark on the journey of motherhood, she couldn't help but wonder if they were truly on the same path. "Ethan, are you sure you're ready for this?" Layla finally asked, her voice steady but laced with concern. "I mean, with everything going on with your startup." He waved his hand dismissively, a confident grin on his face. "Absolutely. This is just the beginning. I promise to make it all work. Besides, we're in this together, right?" He leaned in to kiss her forehead, and for a brief moment, she allowed herself to believe him. As Ethan stood up to check their departure gate, Layla's gaze drifted back to the bustling terminal. Families gathered, some laughing together, others rushing to catch their flights. She could almost envision their future filled with laughter and love, but a shadow loomed over her heart, one she couldn't quite shake. "Layla, come on, we're boarding in 10 minutes, Ethan called, his voice breaking through her reverie. "Okay, coming." She stood up, smoothing down her dress while taking one last look around. The airport felt alive, but she felt oddly detached from it all. There was an unsettling feeling in her chest, but she pushed it aside, reminding herself that everything would be fine. As they walked toward the gate, Layla felt Ethan's hand slip into hers, squeezing it tightly. "Look, I know it's a big change, but we've got this. I can't wait to show you around the valley. You'll see how incredible it is." "Yeah, I'm excited," she replied, forcing a smile. But deep inside, a voice whispered that the reality of their situation was far more complicated than the dreams they had built together. After they boarded the plane and settled into their seats, Layla leaned back, finally allowing herself to relax. She rested her head against the window, watching as the cityscape of New York faded into the distance. The takeoff was smooth, and she clutched her belly, feeling the baby kick inside her, a reminder of the new life they were about to welcome. "See? Everything's going perfectly," Ethan said, glancing over at her. "Just think about how amazing it will be to have our little one in San Francisco. We'll make it work, I promise." "Right," she replied, her voice trailing off as she gazed out at the clouds below. A sense of vulnerability washed over her, a feeling she had grown accustomed to but never fully embraced. A few hours later, after a brief layover, Layla found herself in the airport cafe, waiting for Ethan to return from the restroom. She ordered a steaming cup of coffee, allowing the rich aroma to fill her senses. As she waited, her mind wandered back to the sacrifices she had made. The clinic she had loved and nurtured, the patients who had become like family, she missed it all. And yet she had believed in Ethan, in their shared dreams. Just as she took a sip of her coffee, her phone buzzed on the table. She picked it up, her heart skipping a beat, when she saw an email notification from Ethan. Frowning, she opened it, expecting a simple update about their trip. But as she read the words on the screen, her heart sank. Layla, the email began, I need to be honest with you. Things have changed. I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. The words blurred in front of her as disbelief washed over her. What was happening? She blinked rapidly, trying to process the betrayal that felt like a punch to the gut. The cafe around her faded into a dull roar, the sounds of laughter and chatter becoming distant echoes. Ethan, she whispered, her voice trembling. The reality of the situation began to sink in, and a wave of panic surged through her. She couldn't understand why he would do this, why he would walk away when they were on the brink of starting a family together. Just then, Layla felt a tightening in her abdomen, a discomfort that quickly morphed into a sharp pang. She gasped, clutching her belly as the contractions began. The coffee cup slipped from her hands, shattering on the floor, a loud crash echoing in the cafe. Ma'am, are you okay? A barista rushed over, concern etched on her face. Layla shook her head, her breath coming in quick gasps. I don't know. I think I'm going into labor. The world around her spun as she struggled to comprehend the gravity of the moment. Alone, with her heart shattered by Ethan's betrayal, Layla felt a surge of fear wash over her. She was about to become a mother in the most unexpected and painful way, and all she could think was that she was utterly, irrevocably alone. Layla Mitchell stirred awake, the sterile scent of antiseptic filling her senses. Confusion enveloped her, and for a brief moment, she struggled to remember where she was. The faint beeping of monitors and the soft rustling of fabric brought her back to reality. She blinked against the harsh fluorescent lights, her mind racing as she realized she was in a hospital room. The sudden weight in her arms shifted her focus, and she looked down to see a tiny bundle swaddled in a soft blue blanket. Noah, she whispered, her heart swelling with a mix of love and despair. It was surreal to finally hold her son after the whirlwind of events that had brought her here. Memories of Ethan's abandonment flooded her mind, sharp and painful. But in that moment, all that mattered was the warmth of the baby nestled against her chest. A gentle knock broke her reverie. The door opened and a nurse stepped in, her demeanor calm and reassuring. Good morning, Layla. How are you feeling? Layla shifted slightly, adjusting the blanket around Noah. I think I'm okay, just tired, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The nurse approached the bed, her eyes sparkling with empathy. That's completely understandable. You've been through a lot. Do you need anything? Water? A warm blanket? I could use some water, Layla replied, her throat parched. As the nurse filled a cup and handed it to her, she felt a wave of gratitude. Thank you. Of course. You're doing an amazing job, Layla, the nurse said, her tone encouraging. It's normal to feel overwhelmed. Take your time to adjust. If you need any help, just press the call button. Layla nodded, grateful for the nurse's kindness. As the nurse left the room, she allowed herself to truly look at Noah. His tiny fingers curled around her own, and she felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility wash over her. She was alone now, but this little life depended on her. As days turned into weeks, Layla settled into her new routine, juggling motherhood and the harsh realities of her situation. She spent hours at home with Noah, cradling him while he slept. But the quiet moments were often interrupted by the pressing need to make ends meet. The savings she had once invested in Ethan's dreams were dwindling, and the thought of returning to work weighed heavily on her mind. Determined to provide for Noah, Layla sought out cleaning jobs in local clinics and offices. It wasn't what she had envisioned for herself, but necessity propelled her forward. She navigated the chaos of motherhood and the demands of her jobs, often returning home late at night, exhausted yet resolute. One evening, after a long day of cleaning, Layla stumbled into her small apartment, her muscles aching. She glanced at the clock. It was past midnight. Noah was asleep, and she took a moment to stand in the doorway of his room, watching him breathe softly. A sense of peace washed over her, reminding her why she worked so hard. With a heavy sigh, she dragged herself to the kitchen table, where stacks of medical journals awaited her attention. The desire to reignite her career as a physiotherapist burned within her, and she aimed to specialize in cardiopulmonary rehabilitation. The field fascinated her, and she wanted to make a difference, not just for herself, but for Noah, who she hoped would one day be proud of his mother's accomplishments. As she flipped through the pages, her eyes scanned the words, absorbing information on new techniques and advancements in the field. Each study reignited her passion, and she allowed herself to dream of opening her own clinic one day. Maybe, she murmured to herself, one day I can build a future for us. The thought propelled her forward, and she pored over the material late into the night. One particular evening, she found herself engrossed in an article about innovative approaches to rehabilitation for patients with respiratory issues. Her heart raced with excitement. This was what she wanted to do, help people regain their strength and independence. Just then, Noah began to stir, his soft coos breaking her concentration. Layla smiled, closing the journal as she rose to check on him. She scooped him up from his crib, cradling him against her chest. "Hey there, little guy," she whispered, pressing a gentle kiss to his forehead. "I'm so lucky to have you." Noah's bright blue eyes blinked up at her, and she felt a rush of determination. "I'll make it work for us, I promise," she vowed, her voice firm despite the uncertainty that lay ahead. As the weeks turned into months, Layla continued to balance her cleaning jobs with her passion for physiotherapy. She enrolled in online courses to deepen her knowledge, often studying late into the night while Noah slept soundly beside her. Her determination to create a better life for her son became the driving force behind every decision she made. One evening, as she prepared dinner, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. The bags under her eyes told the story of sleepless nights, but there was also a spark of resolve in her gaze. She was not just a mother, she was a fighter. "Okay, Layla," she said aloud, "you've got this." The affirmation echoed in the quiet kitchen, and she felt a sense of empowerment wash over her. As time passed, Layla's world began to shift. In the face of adversity, she found strength she never knew she had. She made connections in the physiotherapy community, attending workshops and networking events whenever she could. The more she learned, the more confident she became. One afternoon, while at a local clinic, she struck up a conversation with a fellow physiotherapist named Sarah. They discussed their shared passion for helping others, and Layla felt a kinship with her. "Have you ever thought about starting your own practice?" Sarah asked, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. Layla hesitated, the idea both exhilarating and terrifying. "I have, but I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of commitment." "Why not? You have the knowledge and the passion," Sarah encouraged. "You could really make a difference in your community." "I want to," Layla admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm afraid of failing, of not being able to support Noah." "Listen," Sarah said, leaning closer. "Every successful business started with someone taking a leap of faith. You've already overcome so much. Don't let fear hold you back." Layla stared at Sarah, absorbing her words. For the first time, she allowed herself to envision the possibility of a clinic, a place where she could apply her skills and help others. "Maybe I'll think about it," Layla replied, her heart racing at the prospect. As she walked home that evening, the weight of her dreams pressed against her chest. She could see a future where she wasn't just surviving, but thriving. The next several months were filled with planning and preparation. Layla pored over business plans, calculated her finances, and sought advice from mentors. Each step brought her closer to her goal, and with each small victory, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. One night, as she sat at the table with Noah asleep in his crib, she drafted her first business proposal. The words flowed easily as she outlined her vision for a physiotherapy clinic focused on cardiopulmonary rehabilitation. The possibilities felt endless, and for the first time since Ethan's betrayal, she felt a glimmer of hope illuminating the shadows of her past. "Together we can do this," she whispered to Noah, her heart swelling with determination. "I won't let anything stop us." As Layla embraced her journey, she knew that the road ahead would be challenging, but she was ready to face it head-on for herself and for her son. The shadows of abandonment would not define her. They would only fuel her desire to create a brighter future. The sun streamed through the large windows of Layla Mitchell's newly opened physiotherapy clinic, casting a warm glow on the vibrant blue walls adorned with motivational quotes and images of smiling patients. 5 years had passed since she had given birth to her son Noah, and in that time, she had transformed her life from one of despair to one of purpose and achievement. Layla stood behind the reception desk, her hands busy organizing patient files, but her mind wandered to the journey that had brought her here. "Mommy, look!" Noah's voice broke through her reverie, pulling her attention to the small play area in the corner of the clinic where he was stacking colorful blocks. He was a bright, inquisitive child, his curiosity often leading him into imaginative worlds of adventure. Layla felt a surge of pride as she watched him. Every sacrifice she had made, every late night spent studying and working, was for him. "That's amazing, sweetie. You're building a skyscraper," she encouraged, her heart swelling with affection. Noah beamed at her praise. "And it's going to be the tallest one in the whole city." His enthusiasm was contagious, and Layla couldn't help but smile back, her heart filled with warmth despite the challenges they had faced. The clinic had become a sanctuary, not just for her patients, but for Layla herself. She had worked tirelessly to create a space where people felt cared for, and that dedication was beginning to pay off. Word of her expertise in cardiopulmonary rehabilitation had spread, and patients were flocking to her for help. Just then, the bell above the door jingled, signaling the arrival of a new patient. Layla turned to greet them, her professional demeanor instantly kicking in. "Welcome to Mitchell Physiotherapy. How can I assist you today?" She was met with a familiar face, but one she had not seen in years. Ethan stood at the entrance, looking different than the man she once knew. His hair was neatly styled, his suit crisp and expensive. The confident demeanor that had once drawn her to him now felt like a ghost of their past. "Ethan," she said, her voice laced with disbelief. "What are you doing here?" He stepped inside, closing the door behind him as if to shield them from the outside world. "I came to see you, Layla. I've been meaning to talk to you." His eyes darted around the clinic, taking in the framed certificates on the walls and the cheerful ambiance she had created. Layla crossed her arms, a protective gesture she often found herself in when faced with reminders of her past. "Talk to me? After all this time? You abandoned us, Ethan. You have no right to just walk back into my life." He looked pained, his expression shifting as he took a step closer. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, and I regret it every day. But I've changed. I'm not the same man I was." "Is that supposed to make me feel better?" Layla challenged, her voice steady, though her heart raced. "You left me alone, Ethan. You left me to face everything by myself. I had to rebuild my life from scratch. I can help you now. I want to help," he said, desperation creeping into his tone. "I've had success with my startup. I can offer financial support for Noah's education, for anything you need. I just want a chance to make things right." Layla felt a mixture of anger and confusion welling up inside her. You think money can fix what you broke?" she replied, her voice rising slightly. "You think you can just throw cash at me and expect forgiveness? It doesn't work that way." Ethan's shoulders slumped, and he ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident on his face. "I'm not trying to buy your forgiveness. I'm trying to be part of Noah's life. I want to be a father to him." The thought of Noah having Ethan in his life felt like a double-edged sword. She had worked so hard to shield Noah from the pain of his father's abandonment. But the longing for a father figure was something she could not deny existed in her son. "Noah doesn't need you, Ethan. He has me, and I'm more than enough. I will always be enough." Ethan looked stricken, as if her words were physically striking him. "I understand that I don't deserve your trust or your forgiveness, but I want to try. I want to be there for him. Please, just let me in." "No," Layla said firmly, shaking her head. "You don't get to waltz back into our lives and pretend like nothing happened. You chose to leave. You made that choice, and it hurt us both." Ethan took a deep breath, his eyes pleading. "I know I can't change the past, but I can be here now. I can help you, Layla. I can help Noah." Her heart ached with the weight of his words, the flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, he could be a changed man. But the scars were still fresh in her memory. The abandonment, the betrayal. "I've built a life for us without you, Ethan. I don't need your money or your help. I just want you to leave." He stepped back, visibly shaken by her rejection. "I didn't want to hurt you, Layla. I never wanted that." "But you did," she replied, her voice softening slightly but still firm. "And now you have to live with the consequences of your choices." With that, Ethan turned to leave, his shoulders slumped, defeated. He paused at the door, looking back one last time, searching her face for any sign of understanding, of forgiveness. But Layla's expression was resolute. As the door closed behind him, Layla felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Relief, anger, and a hint of sadness for the man she once loved. She leaned against the reception desk, taking a moment to steady her breath. The encounter stirred up so many memories, so much pain that she had fought to bury. Noah's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Mommy, is everything okay?" She turned to him, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. Everything is fine." But deep down, she knew that the shadows of the past would always linger, threatening to disrupt the life she had fought so hard to create. Layla vowed then and there that she would never allow Ethan's choices to overshadow their lives again. She would protect Noah at all costs, even if it meant facing the darkness alone. As she resumed her work, a quiet strength settled within her. She had built this clinic, this life, from the ashes of abandonment. And no matter what happened next, she would continue to rise for herself and for Noah. Noah Mitchell stood in the bathroom, staring at his reflection in the mirror, the fluorescent lights above casting a harsh glow on his face. He was 15 now, a tall and lanky teenager with unruly curls that seemed to have a mind of their own. But it was not his hair that concerned him today. It was the fatigue etched under his eyes and the ashen pallor of his skin. He had been feeling unwell for weeks, but he brushed it off as just another bout of teenage angst and stress. "Mom!" he called, his voice echoing slightly in the empty house. The silence that followed felt heavy, amplifying his unease. Layla was at the clinic as usual, working late to ensure that they could make ends meet. She was a force of nature, juggling her thriving physiotherapy practice and the demands of single motherhood. Noah admired her, but the weight of his own health seemed to press down on him, making it hard to breathe. Layla entered the house just as Noah was about to leave the bathroom. She was still wearing her scrubs, her hair tied back in a ponytail, and she looked tired but radiant. "Hey, sweetheart," she greeted, placing her bag down on the kitchen counter. "How was school?" "It was fine," Noah replied, avoiding her gaze. He could see the concern in her eyes, the way they searched his face for signs of something amiss. "Just fine," Layla pressed, stepping closer. "You look a bit pale. Are you feeling all right?" Noah hesitated, feeling a lump in his throat. "I don't know, Mom. I've been feeling kind of off. Maybe it's just the flu or something." Layla's expression shifted, a flicker of anxiety crossing her features. "Let me take a look at you. Come sit down." She guided him to the couch, her hands warm and reassuring on his shoulder. As she examined him, her brow furrowed. "You've been more tired than usual, haven't you? How long has this been going on?" "Just a couple of weeks," he muttered, feeling the weight of her scrutiny. "Honestly, I thought it was nothing." "Nothing doesn't usually last this long," she replied, her voice steady, yet filled with concern. "I think we should schedule an appointment with Dr. Patel, just to be safe." Noah nodded, not wanting to argue. Deep down, he knew that he needed help. The thought of seeing a doctor made him uneasy. What if something was really wrong? Later that evening, Layla made the call to Dr. Patel's office. As she spoke, Noah sat at the kitchen table, staring at the remnants of their dinner. The usual warmth of their home felt cold and distant, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. Something profound and unsettling. When they arrived at the clinic a few days later, Noah fidgeted in the waiting room. The sterile smell of antiseptic filled the air, and he could hear the low hum of the fluorescent lights above. Layla sat beside him, her fingers intertwined with his, a comforting presence amid his rising anxiety. "Nervous?" she asked, sensing his apprehension. "A little," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're going to be fine, Noah. Whatever happens, we'll face it together," she reassured him, squeezing his hand. After what felt like an eternity, they were called into Dr. Patel's office. The doctor was kind, his demeanor warm and inviting. He smiled as he entered, but Noah could see the flicker of concern in his eyes when he looked at him. "Hello, Noah. How are you feeling today?" Dr. Patel asked, settling into his chair. "I don't know," Noah replied, his voice shaking slightly. "I just feel really tired, and I've had some weird headaches." Dr. Patel nodded, taking notes. "Let's do a few tests just to rule out any underlying issues. I want to make sure we're not missing anything serious." Noah's heart raced at the doctor's words, and he felt Layla's hand tighten around his. As the doctor examined him, Noah couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Days later, the results came back. Layla was at work when Dr. Patel called her. She answered, her heart pounding in her chest, a sense of foreboding washing over her. "Layla, I need to talk to you about Noah," Dr. Patel said, his voice serious. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her stomach twisting in knots. "Not exactly. Noah has a rare renal condition. We need to discuss our next steps." The words struck like a bolt of lightning. Layla felt her breath hitch in her throat as she processed the information. What does this mean for him? He'll need to undergo further testing to determine the severity. Depending on the findings, he might need a transplant, Dr. Patel explained gently. Layla's mind raced. A transplant? It sounded surreal and frightening. She thought of all the sacrifices she had made for Noah, how hard she had fought to give him a good life. The idea that his future could be threatened sent waves of fear crashing over her. "I'll be right there," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor beneath. She hung up, her heart heavy with dread as she raced to the clinic to be with Noah. When she arrived, Noah was sitting in the examination room, a look of confusion on his face. "Mom, what's wrong?" Layla knelt beside him, taking a deep breath before she spoke. "Hi, Noah, we need to talk about your health." His eyes widened, and she could see the flicker of fear in them. "Is it bad?" "Dr. Patel is concerned about your kidneys," she said carefully. "You have a rare condition, and we need to figure out what to do next." Noah's face paled, and he leaned back against the wall, his expression shifting to disbelief. "What does that mean? Am I going to be okay?" Layla's heart broke at the vulnerability in his voice. "We're going to do everything we can to help you. You're not alone in this. We'll get through it together." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of appointments, tests, and discussions about treatment options. Noah's condition weighed heavily on Layla, consuming her thoughts. She had always been the strong one, but the thought of losing her son was a burden she could hardly bear. Meanwhile, across town, Ethan's world was crumbling. The tech startup that had once promised him wealth and success was now embroiled in scandal. He had invested everything into his company, but the fallout from a series of poor decisions and unethical practices was tearing it apart. Victoria, his wife, had left him, unable to withstand the pressure that surrounded them. Ethan sat alone in his penthouse apartment, the city skyline before him a stark contrast to the chaos in his life. As he poured himself a drink, the weight of his mistakes pressed down on him. He had chased success relentlessly, but in doing so, he had sacrificed everything else. The thought of Layla and their son haunted him, a constant reminder of how far he had fallen. He picked up his phone, staring at the screen. Should he reach out to Layla? The thought was both terrifying and tempting. He wanted to explain, to apologize, but the words felt inadequate. As he swirled the ice in his glass, he felt the familiar pang of regret gnawing at him. But fate had other plans. As his health declined, he began to experience severe pain in his lower back and fatigue that seemed insurmountable. After a series of tests, he received a devastating diagnosis. He was in the early stages of renal disease. As he absorbed the news, a chilling thought crossed his mind. He would need a transplant, and the only person who could help him was the son he had abandoned. The world around him faded into a blur as he grappled with the reality of his situation. Layla stood in her bustling physiotherapy clinic, a sanctuary of healing and determination amidst the chaotic backdrop of a city that never slept. The walls were adorned with vibrant artwork, pieces created by local artists that injected color into the otherwise clinical environment. Large windows bathed the room in natural light, creating a welcoming atmosphere for her patients. She glanced at the clock, noting the hour just enough time for a quick break before her next appointment. As she moved to the small kitchenette, she felt a familiar pang of exhaustion wash over her. It had been a long day filled with patients recovering from various surgeries, each with their own struggles and stories. But her heart swelled with pride knowing that she was making a difference in their lives, just as she had always dreamed. Every smile, every thankful word from her patients fueled her relentless drive to succeed, not just for herself but for Noah, who was the center of her universe. "Layla?" a voice called from the reception area, interrupting her thoughts. It was Sarah, her right-hand woman and the clinic's office manager. "Ethan is here. He wants to speak with you." The name ricocheted through her mind, stirring emotions she had long buried. Layla set down her coffee cup, the warmth dissipating instantly as her heart raced. Ethan had been a ghost in her life for so long, a shadow of a past filled with betrayal and heartbreak. She had built a life without him, brick by brick, and now he wanted to step back into it? "Send him in," Layla replied, her voice steady but her heart pounding in her chest. She straightened her posture, summoning all the composure she had cultivated over the years. Moments later, Ethan entered the room, a tall figure with disheveled hair and a weary expression that spoke volumes of the years that had passed since they last crossed paths. He wore a tailored suit that hinted at his previous success, but the lines on his face told a different story, one of desperation and regret. "But Layla," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I know this must be a surprise." "Surprise is one word for it," she replied, crossing her arms defensively. "What do you want, Ethan?" Ethan shifted his weight, his eyes searching hers for understanding. "I need your help. I heard about your clinic and how you've become a leading expert in post-transplant rehabilitation." Layla raised an eyebrow, skepticism etched on her face. "And you think I would help you after everything that's happened?" "I wouldn't be here if it wasn't serious," he insisted, his voice rising slightly in frustration. "I'm sick, Layla. I need a kidney transplant, and I don't have anyone else to turn to." Layla felt a cold rush of anger mixed with pity. "You expect me to feel sorry for you? You walked away from us, Ethan. You left when I needed you the most." "I know," he replied, his tone softening. "And I'm sorry. I've been living with that guilt every single day. But now," he paused, swallowing hard. "Now I'm at death's door, and I'm scared." "Scared?" Layla echoed, her voice laced with disbelief. "What about the fear I felt when you abandoned me? When I was alone and pregnant, fighting to survive?" Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he took a step closer, vulnerability evident in his eyes. "I can't change the past, Layla. I can't undo the pain I caused you. But I'm asking for a chance to be a part of Noah's life if he's willing." The mention of Noah sent a jolt through her. She had worked so hard to protect their son from the scars of Ethan's abandonment, and the thought of him being dragged into this turmoil made her stomach churn. Noah doesn't need you, Ethan. He has me. He always has. I know, Ethan said, his voice barely above a whisper. But he deserves to know the truth. He deserves to know who I am, even if it's too late for me to be the father he needs. Layla's heart ached at the sincerity in his voice, but the walls she had built around herself remained strong. You can't just waltz back into our lives and expect everything to be okay. It doesn't work like that. I'm not asking for everything to be okay, Ethan replied, his tone earnest. I'm asking for help. If Noah is a match, I need him. But I understand if you don't want me in your lives. The silence hung heavy between them, a chasm bridged only by the flickering fluorescent lights overhead. Layla's mind raced with conflicting thoughts. Her protective instincts as a mother, her deep-seated resentment towards the man who had left her in her darkest hour, and the undeniable truth of Ethan's current crisis. Why should I trust you? She finally asked, her voice steadier now. What guarantee do I have that you won't just disappear again? Ethan took a deep breath, his eyes imploring. You don't have to trust me. You can't. But I'm not the same man I was. I've lost everything, and now I'm fighting for my life. I just want the chance to make things right. Layla considered this, her heart still heavy with doubt. What if Noah doesn't want to meet you? What if he doesn't want to be a part of your life? I'll accept that, Ethan said, his voice firm, but I need to try. For him, for you, and for myself. The tension in the room was palpable. Layla's thoughts spiraled as she weighed the options before her. Could she really put Noah in a position to confront the man who had hurt them both so deeply? But a part of her recognized Ethan's raw honesty, the desperation that echoed in his voice. It was a reminder that life was complicated, filled with shades of gray where black and white didn't exist. Let me think about it, she finally said, her heart heavy with uncertainty. I can't promise anything. Thank you, Ethan replied, relief washing over him. That's all I'm asking for. As he turned to leave, Layla called out, Ethan! He paused, looking back at her with hope in his eyes. Just remember, this isn't just about you anymore. It's about Noah, too. I understand, he replied, sincerity written all over his face. I won't let you down. As the door closed behind him, Layla sank into the nearest chair, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She had never imagined this moment would come, and now that it had, she was left grappling with the weight of choices that could alter the trajectory of their lives forever. The thought of Noah meeting Ethan sent a wave of protectiveness surging through her. But another voice whispered that perhaps this was an opportunity for healing, not just for Ethan, but for all of them. But healing required trust, and trust was something that had been shattered long ago. Layla closed her eyes, taking a deep breath as she steeled herself for the conversations that lay ahead. One thing was for certain. Whatever happened next, she would fight fiercely to protect her son, even if it meant confronting the shadows of the past. In the sterile confines of Layla's clinic, the atmosphere felt charged with unspoken words, the weight of the past hanging heavily in the air. Layla stood with a clipboard in hand, her heart racing as she observed Ethan, who sat across from her, a specter of the man he once was. The news had hit them both like a freight train. Only a direct relative could donate a kidney, and Noah was the only match for Ethan. The reality of the situation was suffocating, an unbearable amalgamation of hope and despair. Ethan's face drained of color as Layla spoke, her voice steady yet tinged with an underlying tension. Noah is a compatible donor, Ethan, but... She hesitated, searching his expression for any sign of understanding. He has a rare renal condition himself. We can't just make this decision lightly. Ethan's eyes widened, a mixture of shock and realization dawning on him. I didn't know he was sick. How serious is it? His voice cracked, the bravado of a successful entrepreneur crumbling in the face of paternal instinct. Very serious, Layla replied, her tone firm but compassionate. Noah has been managing his condition, but he needs to be careful. This is a huge risk for him. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his body language revealing a man on the brink of collapse. I'm not asking him to sacrifice himself for me, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Not after everything. Layla crossed her arms, her resolve hardening. But you know how health issues can be. Noah wouldn't see it that way. He's compassionate, Ethan. He's always been. The silence between them grew thick, interspersed only by the faint beeping of medical equipment and the distant sound of footsteps in the hallway. Ethan's gaze fell to the floor, the weight of his choices crashing over him like waves in a storm. I left him. I left you both, and now I'm in this position. Your choices have consequences, Layla interjected, her voice rising slightly in intensity. You can't just waltz back into our lives and expect everything to be fixed. You broke our family apart, Ethan. And now you want Noah to pay the price for that? Ethan's eyes flashed with hurt. It's not about that. I can't lose him, Layla. Not like this. I know I don't deserve it, but I need him. I need a chance to make things right. Layla took a deep breath, the tension within her mounting. You think this is a way to make things right? By asking him to make a sacrifice for you? What message does that send? You need to take a step back, Ethan. This isn't just about you. Ethan raised his gaze, desperation etched across his face. What do you want me to do? Just sit here and wait to die? I've made mistakes, I know that, but I'm asking for a lifeline. This is about survival. Before Layla could respond, a soft knock on the door interrupted their heated exchange. Noah entered, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern as he noticed the palpable tension in the room. Mom, is everything okay? Layla's heart ached at the sight of her son, his innocence so stark against the backdrop of their tumultuous conversation. We were just discussing some things. Sweetheart, she replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Why don't you take a seat? Noah sat down, glancing between his mother and Ethan, sensing the undercurrents of emotion swirling around them. Is it about Dad? There was an edge of uncertainty in his voice. Ethan leaned forward, his face pleading. Noah, I know we haven't had the best relationship, but I need to talk to you about something important. Noah's posture stiffened, and he crossed his arms defensively. What is it? If it's about your health or something, I already know. Mom told me. Ethan swallowed hard, the weight of his words pressing heavily on him. I need a kidney transplant. I was told you're a match. He paused, gauging Noah's reaction. I don't want to put you in a position where you feel obligated to help me, but if you're willing. Noah shook his head, confusion and anger flaring within him. You abandoned us, Dad. You left without a word. Why should I help you now? Layla placed a comforting hand on Noah's shoulder, feeling the tension radiating from him. Noah, I know this is hard, but this is also about compassion. It's about understanding that people can change, even if it takes a long time. Compassion? Noah echoed incredulously. He didn't show us any compassion when he walked away. Why should I be the one to save him now? Ethan winced, the raw truth of Noah's words cutting deeper than any knife. I can't change the past, Noah, he said, his voice thick with remorse. But I want to be a better person. If I have the chance to live, I want to try and make things right with both of you. Noah met his father's gaze, searching for sincerity. And what does that even mean? You think that just because I might give you a kidney, we'll magically become a family again? It doesn't work that way, Layla intervened gently. Noah, we can't ignore the gravity of the situation. It's not just about repairing the past. It's also about deciding what kind of future you want. You're not obligated to do anything you don't want to, but I want you to think about it. Noah's brow furrowed as he wrestled with conflicting emotions. Anger, hurt, and an underlying sense of compassion that he couldn't fully suppress. I don't know, Mom. I really don't. As the moments dragged on, Layla watched her son's internal struggle play out. She knew this was an unthinkable decision for someone his age, yet she also recognized the goodness in his heart. Noah, she said softly, it's okay to feel conflicted. You can take your time to think about this. We'll figure it out together. Ethan's eyes, filled with regret, remained locked on Noah. I don't want to put this burden on you. I wish I could change things. I wish I could go back and be the father you needed. Noah finally broke the silence, his voice steady, though emotions surged just below the surface. You can't go back, but you can choose what to do now. I want to think about it, but I need one thing from you, Dad. What is it? Ethan asked, hope flickering in his eyes. I need you to show me that you're serious about changing. That this isn't just about you surviving, but about being a part of my life if I decide to help you. I need to know that you're ready to be a father. Layla felt a rush of pride for Noah's strength, his willingness to confront Ethan with honesty and integrity. The air in the room shifted, the tension morphing into a fragile hope as Ethan nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. I'll do whatever it takes, Noah. Just give me the chance. As the weight of the moment settled around them, Layla felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. They were standing on the precipice of change, and while the past would always linger like a shadow, the possibility of a future, one where compassion and forgiveness could thrive, was beginning to take shape. In the days that followed, Noah took time to reflect on the gravity of his decision while Layla supported him. Through the emotional turbulence, they discussed the importance of kindness, resilience, and the choices that define who we are. Noah was determined to make a decision that would resonate with his values, not just his feelings of resentment toward his father. Eventually, after much contemplation and heart-to-heart conversations with his mother, Noah found clarity. It wasn't about forgiving Ethan for the past. It was about offering a chance for a different future, one where kindness could triumph over betrayal. "I'll do it," Noah finally said one evening, his voice steady and resolute. "I'll donate my kidney, not for him, but because I believe in showing kindness, even when it's hard." Layla's heart swelled with pride as she embraced her son, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're making a beautiful choice, Noah. I'm so proud of you." And as the day of the transplant approached, a sense of unity began to form between Noah and Ethan, a fragile bond woven from threads of hope and forgiveness, allowing them to navigate the complexities of their relationship, one day at a time. If this story of forgiveness, resilience, and healing touched your heart, make sure to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in Noah's position? Would you have found the strength to show such compassion? Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that remind us how love and kindness can transform even the deepest wounds into bridges of hope. Remember, sometimes the bravest thing isn't holding on to pain, but letting it go to make room for something beautiful.